The morning moved fast, like it always did in the center of the city. Cars stopped and started. People crossed the street without looking up, and tall buildings threw long shadows on the ground. Inside one of those buildings, a man sat in the back seat of a black car, checking his watch again and again. His face looked calm on the outside, but inside his mind was full of pressure. Meetings were waiting. Decisions were waiting. People depended on his words and his signature. His life had become a long list of tasks that never seemed to end. He was known as someone powerful, someone who had built success with his own hands. People spoke his title with respect, sometimes fear. Yet that morning he felt tired in a way that sleep could not fix. The city outside the window felt distant, like it belonged to another world. He barely noticed the sounds around him as the car slowed near a public square. At the same time, on the other side of the street, a small figure stood still while the world rushed past. A little girl held the edge of an old wooden piano. The piano was worn, its surface scratched, its color faded by time. It did not belong in such a busy place. People walked around it, some confused, some annoyed. A few glanced at the girl, then looked away, not wanting to get involved. The girl's clothes were clean but simple. Her shoes were slightly too big. Her hair was tied back in a loose way, as if no one had time to fix it properly that morning. She looked much younger than the weight she carried in her eyes. She kept looking around, as if searching for someone, or maybe waiting for the right moment. Her hands rested on the piano, not playing yet. She took a deep breath, then another. Her heart beat fast. She had asked herself many times if she should be there. Every time fear tried to stop her, something stronger pushed her forward. Today was not like other days. Today mattered. The black car stopped because traffic demanded it. The man inside felt the sudden pause and looked up, slightly annoyed. He glanced out the window, expecting to see nothing important. Instead, his eyes landed on the piano first. Then the girl. He frowned, confused. A piano in the middle of the street made no sense. He was about to look back down when the girl moved closer to the car. People nearby noticed her now. Some shook their heads, already sure this was a waste of time. She stood near the window, close enough that the man could see her face clearly. Her eyes met his, and for a moment, neither of them spoke. The city noise seemed to soften, as if the world itself was waiting. Then she asked her question. Her voice was quiet, but it carried urgency. It was not a practiced voice. It was real, filled with hope and fear at the same time. She asked if he could play the piano. She said it was very critical. The word hung in the air. Critical. The man blinked, caught off guard. People had asked him many things before. For money, for favors, for time. No one had asked him this. He almost smiled in disbelief. He had not touched a piano in years. Maybe longer. That part of his life felt locked away, buried under layers of work and responsibility. He shook his head slightly, ready to end the moment. But something stopped him. The way she said it was not dramatic, not loud. There was no trick in her eyes. Only a deep need that did not belong to a child her age. She did not beg. She simply waited. Around them, people whispered. Some laughed softly. Others checked their phones. To them, it was just another strange scene in a busy day. Inside the car, the man felt a strange pull in his chest. He could not explain it. He looked at the piano again. The keys were yellowed, some chipped. It looked fragile, like it had survived many hard years. He asked her why. She hesitated, then said she needed someone to play it properly. Just once. She said time was running out. Those words made his chest tighten. He did not know why. He told himself it was nothing. Just a child's problem. Not his concern. Yet his hand did not reach for the door handle. His eyes did not return to his phone. Instead, he remembered something he had not thought about in a long time. A smaller room. A quiet evening. A piano that once filled a home with sound. A moment before life became heavy. The memory came without warning. Soft but sharp enough to hurt. He cleared his throat and looked away, trying to break the feeling. He told her he was busy. Very busy. She nodded as if she expected that answer. Still, she did not move away. Her fingers touched the piano lightly, not pressing any keys, just feeling its surface. She said she understood. But she also said she had already asked many people. No one had stopped. No one had listened. Her words were simple. They did not blame anyone. They just told the truth. Something inside the man shifted. The driver looked back, unsure. Time was passing. The meeting would start soon. Every second mattered. The man closed his eyes for a brief moment. When he opened them again, he felt a strange calm mixed with fear. He did not know why he was about to do what he did. He opened the car door. People nearby noticed immediately. Whispers grew louder. The girl stepped back, giving him space. Her heart raced, but she kept her face calm. He stood there, tall and well-dressed, next to the old piano and the small girl. The contrast was impossible to ignore. He asked her again why it was critical. She looked up at him and said she would explain. But first, she needed him to hear the piano. Just a few notes. The man looked at the keys. His hands felt stiff just thinking about it. Years of silence lived between him and that instrument. Yet something told him this moment was already changing him, whether he liked it or not. He sat down slowly on the worn bench. The crowd held its breath. The girl stepped aside, watching closely. As his fingers hovered above the keys, the city noise faded further. His heart beat faster, not from stress, but from something deeper. He pressed the first key, and with that single sound, the day took a turn no one expected. The first note did not sound perfect. It was a little shaky, like a voice that had not spoken in a long time. Still, it echoed across the open space and caught people by surprise. A few steps away, someone stopped walking. A car horn faded into the background. The city did not stop completely, but it slowed, just enough to listen. The man's fingers rested on the keys for a moment after that first sound. He felt a strange warmth move through his hands, up his arms, and into his chest. He had forgotten this feeling, or maybe he had tried to forget it. He took a slow breath and pressed another key. Then another. The tune was simple. Nothing fancy. No fast movements or sharp turns. Just a quiet melody that felt honest. Each note carried something old, something real. People who had rushed past only minutes earlier now stood still, forming a loose circle around the piano. The little girl watched closely. Her hands were clasped together in front of her. She was not smiling, but her eyes shone with relief. She had been afraid he would stop after the first note. Afraid he would stand up and walk away like everyone else. But he stayed. As the music continued, the man felt memories rising without his permission. A smaller space, a window open to the evening air, a piano that sounded much better than this one, but carried the same heart. He remembered being younger, sitting beside someone who guided his hands gently, teaching him patience through sound. He had not thought about that time in years. Life had pushed it aside, replacing it with numbers, meetings, and responsibility. Somewhere along the way, he had convinced himself that music belonged to another version of him. A version that no longer existed. Yet here it was, waiting patiently inside his hands. The melody wavered once, and he paused, adjusting his fingers. The piano responded with a soft, tired sound, as if it too was doing its best. The instrument had lived a hard life. Some keys were heavier than others. One made a dull sound instead of a clear one. Still, together they told a story. The girl took a step closer, careful not to distract him. She knew this piano better than anyone. She knew which keys needed extra care. She knew its limits. Seeing someone else treat it gently filled her with quiet gratitude. People in the crowd began to feel something shift. Some crossed their arms, leaning in. Others lowered their phones, forgetting to record. A few wiped their eyes without knowing why. The music did not demand attention. It invited it. The man's breathing slowed. His shoulders relaxed. For the first time that day, his mind was not racing ahead. It was here, in this moment, following the sound of each note. When the tune came to a natural pause, he lifted his hands slightly but did not stand up. The silence that followed felt just as important as the music itself. No one clapped. No one spoke. The girl broke the quiet. She thanked him in a soft voice. Then she asked if he could play a little more. He looked at her, surprised by how calm she seemed now. He asked what the piano meant to her. She sat on the ground beside the bench and rested her back against it. She said the piano belonged to someone who was very important to her. Someone who used to play it every evening, no matter how tired they were. The music made their small home feel safe, even when life outside felt uncertain. She stopped for a moment, choosing her words carefully. She said that person could no longer play. Their hands were too weak now, their voice too quiet. The man felt his throat tighten. She explained that today was important because it might be the last day that person could hear the piano clearly. Doctors had said time was short. Not in a loud way, just honest. The crowd listened closely now. Even those who had arrived late understood this was no longer just a performance. The man nodded slowly. He did not interrupt her. He had learned, through years of power and control, how rare it was to simply listen. She said she had brought the piano there because she did not know what else to do. She could not afford lessons. She could not make the piano sound the way it deserved. She just wanted someone who truly knew how to play, even for a few minutes. She wanted that sound to stay in the air long enough to be remembered. The man looked down at the keys again. He placed his hands back on them, this time with more confidence. He chose a melody he remembered from long ago, one that felt gentle and full at the same time. As he played, the girl closed her eyes. The sound carried warmth. It wrapped itself around the people listening. Some felt reminded of their own homes. Others thought of someone they missed but never spoke about. The man felt tears gather without warning. He blinked, but they did not fall yet. He kept playing, letting the music say what words could not. He realized then that this moment was not an accident. It was not a delay. It was something he had needed without knowing it. When the song ended, the silence returned, heavier than before. The girl stood up slowly. She looked at him with deep seriousness and said that now he needed to hear something too. She asked him to come with her. The driver shifted nervously. Time had passed far beyond the schedule. Phones buzzed in pockets. Reality waited. The man stood up from the bench. He felt different, lighter but also more exposed. He asked where she wanted him to go. She pointed down the street, toward a small building barely noticeable among the larger ones. She said it was not far. People in the crowd watched as the powerful man followed the small girl, leaving behind the piano, the car, and the schedule that once ruled his life. As they walked, the sound of the city slowly returned, but it felt changed. Softer, less demanding. The man did not know what he was about to face, but he knew, without doubt, that turning away now would stay with him forever. And so he kept walking, step by step, toward a truth he was no longer afraid to hear. They walked in silence at first. The little girl led the way, her steps steady, as if she had already walked this path many times in her mind. The man followed a few steps behind, his hands still feeling the echo of the piano keys. The noise of the city surrounded them again, but it no longer felt as loud as before. His thoughts were louder now. He noticed how small the building looked as they came closer. It was old and narrow, squeezed between taller structures that seemed to ignore its existence. The paint on the walls was faded, and the entrance was plain. Nothing about it stood out. If he had passed it on any other day, he would not have remembered it at all. The girl stopped at the door and looked up at him. She asked him to be quiet inside. Her voice was calm, but there was a seriousness in her eyes that made him nod without question. Inside, the air felt different, softer. The smell of old wood and cleaning soap mixed together. The hallway was quiet except for distant sounds from another room. Slow breathing, a faint cough. The man felt his chest tighten again. They moved carefully down the hall. The girl paused outside one door and took a deep breath before opening it. She stepped aside and waited for him to enter first. The room was small but neat. Sunlight came through a half-open curtain, falling gently on a bed near the wall. An older figure lay there, thin and tired, but with eyes still full of life. Tubes and machines were absent. This was not a place filled with alarms or sharp smells. It felt more like a quiet waiting space. The older person turned their head slowly toward the door. When their eyes landed on the man, confusion appeared first, followed by curiosity. The girl walked to the bedside and took their hand. She spoke softly, telling them she had brought someone special, someone who could play. The older person's eyes widened just a little. The man stood still, unsure of where to place himself. He suddenly felt out of place in his clean clothes and polished shoes. This room did not care who he was or what he owned. The girl pulled a chair closer to the bed and invited him to sit. He did so slowly. The older person studied his face and then asked, in a weak but clear voice, if he really played the piano. The man hesitated, then answered honestly. He said he used to. A faint smile appeared on the tired face. They said that was enough. The girl explained that the piano was outside, and that they had heard it already. She described the sound carefully, trying to paint a picture with words. The older person closed their eyes as she spoke, imagining every note. Tears gathered in the corners of their eyes. The man felt something break open inside him. He asked how long the piano had been part of their life. The older person said it had followed them through many years and many homes. It had been there during good times and bad ones. When money was short, when hope was thin, the piano was still there. They said it taught patience. It taught listening. It taught how to sit with silence without fear. The man swallowed hard. The older person asked him if he remembered why he first learned to play. That question landed deep. He closed his eyes for a moment and answered quietly. He said he learned because someone believed in him when he did not believe in himself. Someone who thought music could protect him from the world. The older person nodded slowly, as if they had expected that answer. They said music had a way of circling back, even when people ran from it. The room grew quiet again. The girl watched both of them, sensing something important was happening, something bigger than her request. The man asked why it was so important for them to hear the piano one last time. The older person looked at the ceiling for a long moment. Then they said that sound stays longer than words. Faces fade. Voices change. But music finds a place and rests there. They wanted to leave behind a sound, not a memory filled with pain. The man felt tears finally slip down his face. He did not wipe them away. He realized then that success had taught him many things, but it had also taken many things from him. It had taken time. It had taken softness. It had taken moments like this. The girl squeezed the older person's hand and asked if they were tired. They said they were, but in a good way. The man stood up slowly and asked if he could bring the piano closer. Maybe not inside, but near enough that the sound could travel. The older person smiled again and said that would be perfect. As they left the room together, the man felt a weight on his chest, but also a strange clarity. He knew this meeting was not a coincidence. It was a crossing of lives that needed to happen. Outside, people still stood near the piano. Some had left, but others waited, sensing the story was not finished. When they saw the man return, their attention sharpened. He moved the piano carefully with help from a few strangers. No one spoke. Everyone understood this was something to be handled gently. As the piano was placed closer to the building, the man sat down again. The girl stood near the door, watching the window above where sunlight still touched the curtain. The man rested his hands on the keys and felt the weight of what was coming. This time he did not play for the crowd. He played for one person, and in that moment, he knew that whatever happened next would change him forever. The first notes drifted gently through the open space, slipping past the doorway and climbing up the narrow walls of the building. The sound was softer than before, shaped by distance and air, but it carried a deep warmth. It moved slowly, like it did not want to rush this moment. Inside the room, the older person lay still, eyes closed, breathing shallow but calm. As the music reached them, their fingers twitched slightly. The girl noticed it right away. She leaned closer, watching every small movement, afraid to miss anything. Outside, the man played with care. His hands no longer felt stiff. They moved with purpose, guided by emotion more than memory. Each note felt like a conversation, not a performance. He was not thinking about who was watching or how it sounded. He was thinking about the meaning behind every sound. The crowd stood quietly. Some people held their breath. Others felt tears rise without warning. No one spoke. Even the city seemed to pause again, as if respecting the weight of the moment. Inside the room, the older person's lips curved into a faint smile. A tear slid slowly down the side of their face. The girl reached out and wiped it gently with her thumb. She whispered that the piano was playing just for them. The older person's eyes opened slightly. They looked toward the door, as if they could see the piano through the walls. Their lips moved, forming silent words that did not need sound. The man felt something shift deep inside him. A pressure built in his chest, heavy and sharp. He tried to keep playing, but his vision blurred. Tears fell freely now, landing on the keys without shame. For years, he had taught himself to stay in control, to hide emotion, to keep moving forward without looking back. But the music broke every wall he had built. It reminded him of who he was before ambition took over, before he learned how to protect himself by closing his heart. He remembered the first time he had played for someone else, how nervous he had been, how proud he felt when he saw their eyes light up. That feeling returned now, stronger than ever. Inside the room, the older person lifted their hand weakly, as if reaching for the sound. The girl gently held it, placing it back down. She whispered that it was okay, that they could rest. The music grew quieter, slower. Each note felt like a goodbye wrapped in kindness. Not sad, but full, complete. When the final note faded, silence filled the space again. It was deep and still, like a held breath that did not want to be released. The man's hands rested on the keys. He did not move. He did not stand up. He let the silence do its work. Inside, the older person's breathing slowed. Their face looked peaceful. The girl leaned closer, listening carefully. After a moment, she realized something had changed. She did not panic. She did not cry out. She simply held the hand a little tighter and whispered thank you. The man felt it too, even without seeing it. A calm certainty settled over him. He stood up slowly and turned toward the building. The girl stepped outside a few moments later. Her eyes were red, but her face was calm. She nodded once. The man understood. No one in the crowd asked questions. They did not need answers. The truth had already passed through them in the form of music. The man walked toward the girl and knelt in front of her. He did not speak right away. He simply stayed there, sharing the quiet. After a while, he asked if she was okay. She nodded again. She said they were happy, that the piano sounded just right, that it was exactly what they needed. Her strength surprised him. He realized she had grown older in that moment, shaped by love and loss at the same time. The man looked around at the people watching, then back at the piano. He felt a deep responsibility settle in his heart, not as a duty but as a calling. He asked the girl what would happen to the piano now. She said she did not know. She could not take it back. There was no room, no money to move it. The man stood up and made a quiet decision. He asked for help. People stepped forward without hesitation. Together, they moved the piano carefully, as if it were something sacred. He promised the girl that the piano would not be forgotten, that its sound would continue, that it would help others the way it had helped them. She listened closely, then asked him why he cared so much. He answered honestly. He said the piano reminded him of a part of himself he had almost lost, and finding it again mattered more than anything he had planned that day. The girl looked at him for a long moment. Then she smiled. It was small but real. As the crowd slowly began to leave, the man remained behind. He felt changed, not in a loud or dramatic way, but in a deep, lasting one. He knew this was not the end of the story. It was the moment everything truly began. The crowd was gone by the time the afternoon light began to soften. What remained was a quiet street, an old piano, and two people standing beside it. The city had returned to its usual rhythm, but something invisible lingered in the air, like a feeling that refused to leave. The man looked at his phone for the first time in a long while. Missed calls, messages, meetings that never happened. For once, none of it felt important. He put the phone back into his pocket and turned to the girl. He asked her what would happen next. She shrugged gently. She said she would go home. She would rest. There were things to do even after everything that had happened. Life did not stop completely, even on the hardest days. Her calm amazed him. He realized that while he had spent years learning how to control companies and plans, this child had learned how to face truth without running from it. He asked where home was. She pointed toward a small neighborhood not far away. Nothing special. Just a place where people lived quietly and helped each other when they could. He nodded and said he would walk with her for a bit. They moved slowly side by side. The piano had already been taken care of, safely moved with help from people who stayed behind. The girl looked back once, then forward again. She did not cry. As they walked, the man asked her about school, about the music she liked, about simple things. She answered honestly, sometimes smiling, sometimes thinking carefully before speaking. She said she liked songs that told stories, songs that felt real. He understood that more than she knew. When they reached a corner where they would part ways, he stopped. He took a deep breath, unsure how to say what he felt. He told her that what she did took courage, that many adults would not have been brave enough to ask for help the way she did. She listened quietly, then said she only did what felt right. He smiled at that. Before she left, he asked one more question. He asked if she wanted to keep learning music. Her eyes widened just a little. She said yes, but she did not know how that would be possible. He said they would figure it out. Slowly, properly, without pressure. She did not jump or shout. She simply nodded, trusting him in a quiet way that felt heavier than any promise. They said goodbye, and she walked away, her steps light but steady. The man stood there for a long moment, watching until she disappeared from view. That evening he returned to his office, but it felt different. The walls felt colder, the silence louder. He sat at his desk and stared out the window. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to feel the weight of everything he had ignored. The choices, the sacrifices, the moments he told himself he would return to someday. He realized that success had given him comfort, but music had given him meaning. Over the following days he made changes. Not loud ones, not the kind that made headlines. Small but honest ones. He cleared time. He listened more. He returned calls he once avoided. He found a piano and placed it in his home. The first night he did not play it. He just sat beside it, letting its presence fill the room. Later he began to play again. Slowly, carefully, for himself. He kept his promise to the girl. Lessons were arranged quietly. No attention, no cameras, just learning, patience, and sound. The piano from the street found a new place too. A place where others could hear it. Where music could reach people who needed it most. Weeks passed. One afternoon, the man attended a small gathering. Nothing formal. Just people sitting close together, listening. The girl sat at the piano. Her hands shook at first. Then they steadied. She played. The music was not perfect, but it was honest, full of feeling, alive. The man sat among the listeners, his eyes wet, his heart open. He understood then that tears were not weakness. They were proof that something mattered. When the song ended, there was quiet before applause. The kind of quiet that means people felt something they could not explain. The girl looked toward him, searching. He nodded. That was enough. As the room slowly emptied, the man stayed seated, listening to the echo of the last note in his chest. He knew his life would never return to what it was before, and he was thankful for that. Because sometimes the most urgent question is not about time or money. Sometimes it is simply about whether someone is willing to listen. That day he did, and it changed everything.